A first-century pilgrim walks up the monumental southern steps of Mount Moriah, dust baking on his sandals. Most people read the gospel accounts of Jesus walking into this temple, flipping tables, and driving out money changers, and they assume he was angry about economics. We do not use Herodian limestone anymore. We do not carve warning signs in Greek and paint them with aggressive red pigment. We do not enforce our boundaries with Roman swords. But the human heart still demands a soreg. The human heart still craves an inner ring. Look at how we construct our modern religious spaces. Look at how we build our communities. We draw lines. We establish perimeters. We decide who gets the microphone and who is relegated to the folding chairs in the back. We decide who is orthodox enough, clean enough, or polished enough to step closer to the fire. We build courts for the insiders. We build courts for the outsiders. You can feel it in the temperature of a room. The sudden, cold silence when the wrong kind of person walks through the sanctuary doors. You can see it in the glare of a smartphone screen, where theological factions wage relentless war over who actually belongs to God. You can smell it in the cheap coffee of the overflow rooms, where we place the people who do not quite fit the aesthetic of the main stage. You can hear it in the quiet, calculating whispers in church lobbies, categorizing people by their past failures, their tax bracket, their pedigree. Same pattern of decreasing access. Again and again. We love a tiered system. It makes us feel secure. It provides a tangible metric for our own righteousness. They assume he was cleansing a holy space of predatory capitalism. But if you look closer at where he actually stood, if we can point to someone standing out there in the cold, we can convince ourselves we have earned the right to stand inside where it is warm. We use doctrine like masonry. We use morality like a balustrade. The ancient architecture is not dead. It is internalized. We still weaponize the geography of access. We still look at the broken, the questioning, the outsider, and we tell them they have a designated space, but it is out there in the noise and the dust. We still decide that some people are meant for the outer perimeter, and we alone are qualified for the sacred core. This is not just a historical artifact. It is a human disease. We desperately want God to be exclusive, because exclusivity is the currency of power. If proximity to the divine is scarce, then those who control the gates hold all the cards. And the religious elite of the first century possessed the ultimate symbol of that power. Beyond the court of the women, beyond the court of the Israelites, beyond the bloody, copper-smelling pavement of the court of the priests, at the very center of the map stood a barrier that no amount of pedigree could cross. A line drawn not in stone, but in thick, heavy threads. A boundary that did not just keep humanity out. It kept something else in. At the specific stones under his feet, when he braided a whip, you start to see something the economic reading completely misses. The naos, the towering gold-plated sanctuary at the absolute center of the mountain. Step through the heavy cedar doors. The blinding sunlight of the courtyards vanishes, replaced instantly by the flickering orange glow of the golden lampstand. The air is thick, heavy with the sharp, sweet smoke of burning frankincense. You walk past the table of bread. You walk toward the back of the room, until your sandals stop at the edge of a massive, woven wall. The veil, 60 feet high, woven from blue, purple, and scarlet threads. Tradition says it was as thick as a man's hand span, woven so tightly that teams of horses tied to either side could not pull it apart. It hangs there in the dim light, absolute and immovable, separating the holy place from the holy of holies. The dark was silent, windowless cubic room where the unmitigated presence of the Almighty resides. The veil is not a decoration. It is a quarantine. It is the final, most terrifying border on the mountain. It declares that the raw holiness of God is lethal to a broken world and must be contained behind heavy fabric and the blood of the Day of Atonement. Only one man, one day a year, can cross this line. Everyone else stays out. Jesus was not protesting a marketplace. He was attacking a border. The real question of the temple cleansing isn't why he was angry. until a Friday afternoon in the spring, outside the city walls, on a limestone execution block, a Galilean rabbi takes a final, ragged breath. He pushes up on Roman iron. He speaks a single word of completion. His lungs empty. His head falls. And inside the silent naos, where priests are tending the evening incense, the earth violently shakes. The stone floor heaves under their bare feet. The heavy fabric violently rips. From top to bottom, the thick threads snap like gunfire in the dark. The curtain falls open. The terrifying, exclusive core of the universe is suddenly exposed to the flickering light of the lampstand. The quarantine is breached. The presence of God does not stay in the dark room. It rushes out. It floods into the holy place. It pours into the court of the priests. It rushes past the low wall of the men. Sweeping through the court of the women, it crashes past the massive bronze doors, flooding into the court of the Gentiles, spilling over the aggressive red letters of the Soreg stone, out into the streets of Jerusalem, and into the dust of the world. The geography of separation is completely annihilated. The architecture of access is rewritten in blood. The map is destroyed. But this tearing did not just break. It's this. Where exactly did the tables fall? Jesus was not offering a bumper sticker about greed. He was diagnosing something much deeper. The physical threads in a first-century building. It fractured a barrier that still exists inside of you. The physical temple burned to the ground in the year 70. Roman legions set fire to the towering cedar doors and pried the melted gold from the cracks in the limestone. The Hieron was leveled. The naos was erased. Not a single block of the warning balustrade was left standing on another. But the most stubborn walls are not made of rock. They are made of shame. You can still feel the phantom stones under your feet. You can still see the aggressive red letters of your own past, warning you that you are disqualified from approaching the center. You hear the singing of the inner courts. You smell the sharp scent of the incense, and you instinctively assume it is not for you. You believe your natural habitat is the perimeter. You assume you belong out in the noise and the dust of the court of the Gentiles. Watching other people experience a proximity you are simply not allowed to have. How many times have you mentally stopped at the balustrade? You begin to pray, but a sudden memory of yesterday's failure flashes in your mind, and you immediately step backward. You tell yourself you need to wait. You need to sit in the silence about who is allowed to approach the divine, to feel the weight of what happened that week. You need to step into first-century Jerusalem. You need to spend a few days in the outer courtyard to prove you are sufficiently sorry before you dare approach the inner sanctuary. You have internalized the ancient architecture. You have built a high priest in your own mind, and you have handed him a ledger of conditions that heaven has already torn to shreds. This distance is not a divine mandate. It is a ghost. We convince ourselves that God is waiting for us to earn the right to cross the thresholds. We think we have to perform well enough to pass the Soreg, clean ourselves up enough to enter the gates, and achieve enough theological perfection to survive standing near the fire. We treat the torn veil as a polite historical metaphor, while living our daily lives as if those heavy blue and purple threads are still completely intact, hanging thick, cold, and suffocating in the dark room of our own unworthiness. The tragedy of the modern believer is standing in a completely open field, terrified of a cage that no longer exists. Your failures do not rebuild the Soreg. Your doubts do not sew the veil back together. The entire geography of separation was dismantled from the inside out. Specifically, so the raw, unmitigated presence of God could flood the very spaces you think are too dirty for him to enter. He did not flip the tables to negotiate a better border. He flipped the tables to abolish it. You have to understand that this architecture was meticulously designed to keep you at a distance. The journey toward the center is a journey, but to actually live in the freedom of that open space, you have to look back at what was left in the rubble. The nations were pushed into a noisy market, and a whip cleared the ground for their prayers. The elite protected only the golden sanctuary, and a carpenter declared the dusty perimeter just as sacred. The women were stopped at a heavy bronze gate, and the Spirit bypassed the gate entirely. The men were halted by a low stone wall, and the final sacrifice dismantled the stones. The priests stood barefoot in the blood of lambs, and the Lamb of God walked into the ultimate fire. The warning stones threatened death to the outsider, and a cross washed the red letters clean. The thick, woven veil held the presence of God in the dark, and a dying breath tore the fabric from top to bottom. One mountain, one torn map, one open room. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the aggressive red letters of the Soreg. The bureaucratic, terrifying certainty that stepping closer would mean death. We are so deeply conditioned to believe that our brokenness disqualifies us, of increasing exclusivity. And it starts at the outermost edge, a place meant for the entire world, but built like a waiting room, that we build those walls back up in our own minds just to make sense of the world. If you are in a season where you feel relegated to the perimeter, if you're past your failures or your quiet doubts, you have convinced you that you only belong in the noise of the outer courtyard. Look at the torn threads. You do not have to wait in the dust. You do not have to perform for the priests. The geography of exclusion has been completely leveled. And may the God who tore the heavy veil with his own breath walk with you into the open space and bring you into a proximity you could never have earned on your own. If this reached something in you, subscribe. Leave a comment, even one word, helps. Share this with someone who feels like they are standing on the outside. Pray for us as we keep digging into these texts. Herod's architectural masterpiece begins with the Court of the Gentiles, a sprawling perimeter that consumed the majority of the 35-acre compound. It is a triumph of ancient engineering, held up by massive subterranean vaults and paved with geometrically cut stone that would blind you in the midday sun. The Herodian limestone is white in the afternoon sun, reflecting heat so intensely you have to squint just to look at the towering colonnades. Anyone could walk here. A Roman soldier from Syria, a Greek merchant from Alexandria, an Ethiopian traveler following rumors of the Hebrew God. They could all stand in this outer ring and look up toward the towering gold plates of the inner sanctuary. But they could only look. If a Gentile traveler walked inward across the sun-baked pavement, their journey would violently halt at a low, meticulously carved stone balustrade known as the Soreg. It stood just under 5 feet tall, wrapping entirely around the inner courts like a physical chokehold. Spaced at regular intervals along this barricade were thick limestone blocks, deeply engraved with Greek and Latin letters. The grooves of the text were painted in stark, aggressive red, so the warning could not possibly be missed. Even from a distance, archaeologists actually unearthed one of these very stones in 1871, buried deep in the rubble of modern Jerusalem. The inscription is chilling in its administrative, bureaucratic precision. It reads, "No foreigner is to enter within the balustrade and enclosure around the temple area. Whoever is caught will have himself to blame for his ensuing death." The Soreg was not a decorative architectural transition. It was a militarized border. This was the only place on the planet where the Roman Empire allowed a subjugated people. You can hear the bleating of sheep mixing with the murmur of a dozen different languages, echoing off retaining walls that plunge deep into the bedrock, to legally execute a Roman citizen without a trial. If a Gentile took one step past those red letters, their life was forfeit. The religious authorities had weaponized the architecture, building a physical manifestation of who was close to God and who was an outsider. The Court of the Gentiles was the only space on the mountain where the nations could gather to pray, yet the structure itself constantly whispered that they were secondary, distant, and inherently unclean. The visual hierarchy was inescapable. The closer you got to the center, the higher the ground was elevated, literally forcing the outsiders to look up at the chosen insiders. The vast outer plaza was designed to keep the nations in their place. But by the 1st century, the high priesthood had decided that simply keeping the Gentiles behind a wall was not quite enough. They found a way to squeeze them out of their own designated space entirely, filling the only courtyard the nations had with the deafening, bleeding machinery of religious commerce, which sets the stage for the most misunderstood riot in the New Testament. Passover is days away. Hundreds of thousands of pilgrims flood into the city. The Court of the Gentiles is unrecognizable. It smells of wet wool, manure, and unwashed bodies. It echoes with the shouting of merchants and the bleating of trapped livestock. This is the crown jewel of the ancient world. Herod the Great flattened a mountain to build it. The family of the high priest has authorized the sacrificial markets to operate right here in this specific courtyard. To buy a sacrifice, you need temple currency. To get temple currency, you pay an exorbitant exchange fee to the bankers. The only space on the entire mountain where a foreigner is permitted to stand has been turned into a deafening, chaotic shortcut for the religious elite. The nations are pushed against the edges. The space, meant for their prayers, is buried under the machinery of commerce. Jesus walks into this courtyard. He stops. He does not debate the priests. He does not hold a seminar on extortion. He bends down. He gathers cords from the dirt. He braids a whip. And then the courtyard explodes. He swings. Tables flip. Heavy wood splinters against the Herodian limestone. Silver coins scatter and ring across the sun-baked pavement. Men shout. Pigeons panic as cages burst open. Wings scattering into the hot Judean sky. Cattle stampede toward the southern gates. The relentless, profitable rhythm of the religious machine completely shatters. Jesus stands in the cleared space, chest heaving, the whip in his hand, and he shouts a quote from the prophet Isaiah over the chaos. "My house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations," creating a stone plaza so massive it could hold 24 football fields. Pilgrims from Rome, Alexandria, and Parthia Star. Look at the last three words. For all nations. He is not just reciting a verse. He is pointing at the ground beneath his feet. He is defending the court of the Gentiles. The religious authorities had decided this outer space did not matter. They decided the prayers of the outsider were expendable. Secondary to the convenience of the insider, they had weaponized the footprint of the mountain to say that holiness only existed closer to the center, beyond the warning stones. Jesus is not protesting an exchange rate. He is reclaiming a territory. He is violently declaring that the space where the outsider stands is just as jealously guarded by God as the space where the high priest stands. But to see how deeply this disrupts the entire architecture of the temple, you have to look at the exact Greek word the Gospel writers choose to describe this riot. Matthew chapter 21. Mark Elev. Luke Eudexantoista. Jesus is standing among the splintered wood and scattered silver. We read in our modern translations that he has just cleansed the temple, but the English language is hiding a massive architectural distinction. Up at gold-plated doors that require 20 men to push open, the smell of roasting meat and cedar incense hangs heavy in the dry wind. The Greek text possesses two completely different words that we collapse into that single English noun. The word the Gospel writers use for the space Jesus just violently cleared is the Greek hieron. The hieron is the entire 35-acre complex. It encompasses the monumental southern steps, the shady colonnades, the Sorig warning stones, and the vast, sun-baked court of the Gentiles. It appears over 70 times in the New Testament, usually referring to the public spaces where crowds gathered, where rabbis debated, and where the merchants set up their stalls. It is the sprawling geographic footprint of the mountain. But there is a second word. When the biblical writers want to describe the towering, gold-plated building at the very center, the sanctuary, the dark and silent room where the presence of God actually dwells, they do not use hieron. They use the Greek word naos. The naos is the place of the altar, the burning incense, and the thick, woven veil. It is the geographic epicenter of ancient worship, accessible only to a fraction of the population. The naos is the sacred core. The hieron is the perimeter. Jesus is standing in the hieron, in the dust of the outermost courtyard. He is not walking toward a simple place of worship. He is walking into a 35-acre map of human separation, demanding that the space reserved for the nations be treated with the exact same jealous reverence as the naos. He is elevating the perimeter to the status of the core. If realizing the exact location of these tables changes how you read the Gospels, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe, because every week we uncover the layers of the ancient text hiding in plain sight. So the Apostle Paul takes this exact architectural distinction and turns it into a theological weapon. Decades after the table's fall, Paul writes a letter to a messy, divided church in the city of Corinth, and he tells them that their physical bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit. He does not use the word hieron. He does not say your body is a sprawling courtyard with walled-off sections, warning stones, and restricted access. He says your body is a naos, the innermost sanctuary, the exact coordinates where heaven and earth intersect, completely bypassing the outer walls. The temple is not a static piece of architecture. It is a living map of human exclusion that heaven is actively dismantling. But before you can feel the weight of that map being destroyed, you have to see how suffocating those inner walls actually were. Every stone here means something. Every step inward is a restriction. A courtyard for the nations. A courtyard for the women. Imagine walking past the splintered tables and the aggressive red letters of the Sorg. You step up. The elevation of the mountain physically rises. The blinding white limestone of the outer court, giving way to heavier shadows and thicker gates. You pass through the beautiful gate, its Corinthian bronze doors gleaming like gold. The metal is so massive, so heavy. It takes a team of 20 men to swing them shut against the evening wind. You step into the Court of the Women. Jewish families gather here under the open Judean sky. They bring their offerings, their newborn children, their wooden cages of doves, and their grain. You can hear the Levites singing on the 15 semicircular steps, plucking harps and striking cymbals, their voices echoing off the towering colonnades. It is a place of profound, communal worship, but for half the population of Israel. The journey ends right here. A Jewish woman can see the thick smoke rising from the altar. She can smell the roasting meat and the sharp scent of cedar wood. She can hear the silver trumpets blast across the courtyard, but she cannot step near the fire. Another wall stands in her way, another boundary line drawn in heavy stone. The men walk past her. They climb those 15 steps. They pass through the gate of Nicanor and step into the narrow court of the Israelites. They are closer now. The sheer, radiating heat. A courtyard for the men of Israel. A courtyard for the blood. Same pattern of decreasing access. Again and again, from the massive square altar presses against their faces, they stand shoulder to shoulder, a sea of men gripping the wool of their lambs, waiting their turn in the crushing crowd. The sound of bleeding animals and chanting priests is deafening, but even they must stop. A low stone parapet, barely a foot high, separates them from the court of the priests. Only the sons of Aaron can cross this line. The men of Israel hand over their sacrifices, watching the priests wade barefoot through channels of warm blood, smelling the sharp, metallic copper tang of the slaughter. The layman can bring the sacrifice, but he cannot touch the altar. The geography is a funnel. With every step inward, the crowd gets smaller. With every gate, someone is left behind. The Gentile is stopped. The woman is stopped. The layman is stopped. The architecture is not an invitation. It is a filter. It is a physical manifestation of a terrifying theological idea that proximity to God is dangerous, and almost no one is qualified to survive it. The mountain is built to keep you at exactly the distance your birth and your bloodline dictate. You are sorted, categorized, and halted. We look back at this sprawling, segregated complex and think it belongs exclusively to a primitive, ancient world. We assume those physical walls were buried in the rubble of history. But the truth is, we have never stopped building them.